A perfect day in Chicago turned into a night I'd never forget when I ventured out alone and met Steven. "You're so sweet," I exclaimed as we danced in the dark. The next morning, housekeeping jolted me awake, revealing a beautiful stranger. How did I end up here? I was in Chicago with a friend some time ago, before 2020, so we could attend a poetry and literary reading by our favorite author. She was staying with her boyfriend while I had my own room a few blocks away. I usually wake up early, while she enjoys staying out late and sleeping in, so I was not planning to meet her until later in the day for our meeting at the Poetry Center. Early in the morning, I was up searching for a cup of tea and a bit of breakfast, and then I made my way to the Art Institute of Chicago, where I spent most of my day. For anyone who is not aware, this museum is one of the best in the world. I was there for about 5 hours, and I still could not see everything they had on display. It was one of the most incredible experiences I have ever had in my life. When I am feeling down, I often reflect on the echoing silence of that building. Towards the end of my visit, I turned a corner and spotted it. I had seen the painting in printed copies, but I had no idea that I would actually come face to face with Nighthawks that day. I truly felt as though I had the breath knocked out of me. The way the yellow light from inside the diner brightens the dark street is something that must be experienced in person. This Edward Hopper painting is permanently housed in this museum, and I believe it is worth a trip just to see it with your own eyes. I am not conveying my feelings very well, but it was a breathtaking experience that I think about often. As the afternoon wore on, I finally went to meet my friends so we could begin our evening. I had a glass of pink, dry rose with them at a bar, and then we went for dinner. Following that, we took a taxi to the Poetry Center for our reading by our beloved author. We held hands, captivated by the discussion. It was another extraordinary experience of the day. After the event, her boyfriend wanted to watch a football game, which was fine by me. They found a Hooters to watch it at. Yes, after our literary event, I ended up at Hooters, but when in Rome, right, it turned into a pleasant evening. After the football game concluded, my friend left with her boyfriend while I stayed to watch the second half of the Cubs vs. Nationals game. This was a World Series game the year following the Cubs' long-awaited victory, so everyone was quite excited. The restaurant began to close and clean up, and the staff informed me that it was fine for me to remain and finish watching. I engaged in a long conversation with one of the waitresses, and when the Cubs won decisively against the Nationals, we jumped up and down and embraced each other. I had made a friend for the evening, and it was a lovely experience, as simple as that. It was just before midnight when I left Hooters. I feel silly typing that and walked back to my hotel. I was feeling quite energized and did not want to go to sleep yet, and my hotel had a nice rooftop bar. I decided to have a glass of wine before heading to bed. I had just experienced an incredible daysome solitary time at the museum, dinner, a poetry reading with my best friend, and even a fun spontaneous baseball game. I didn't want the night to end. I sat on the left side of the bar with the stack of books I had acquired from the reading and ordered a Sauvignon Blanc. I was 38 at the time and not very conventionally attractive, and typically I am left alone. For some reason, however, not one but two men began to simply bother me. I was really just there to savor my drink before sleep, and I was not accustomed to men trying to engage me. The bartender, Shauna, I still remember her name, told me that she thought I would enjoy the company on the other side of the bar more. I took her advice and moved. Shauna was correct. There was a friendly woman visiting from Arizona, and we chatted about books in Chicago, enjoying a pleasant conversation. I ordered what I thought would be my last glass of wine as my new friend went to bed after our discussion. Shauna mentioned that she was glad I was having a good time and that she wanted people to feel comfortable at her bar. In the meantime, two younger men approached me and started talking with Shauna. I did not pay too much attention, but gathered that they were also bartenders who knew Shauna and had just finished their shifts. Shauna produced an ornate crystal bottle of some kind of rum that she had received and wanted to share with her friends. Admittedly, I was a bit tipsy at that point as my attention was caught by the bottle. I do not usually drink much hard liquor. I was simply taken by the beautiful bottle, and I said, "Hey, can I join in on this and have a shot, please?" So I inadvertently had a drink with the two individuals sitting next to me. I finished my wine, settled my bill, and left Shauna a 20 tip for her kindness. One of the guys beside me casually mentioned that they were heading to a 4 a.m. bar and that you can come if you want. Well, let me backtrack. So I was 38 and separated from my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, during this time. I was alone in a bar in Chicago. I did not understand how Uber or Lyft worked. I had never gone anywhere with a stranger before, let alone two. I had been with exactly one person since the age of 22. This was entirely new territory for me. I hastily decided to go for it. I returned to my room to drop off my books and put on a fleece jacket. Quickly, my mind assessed the possibilities. 1, they were going to murder me and leave me in an alley for the rats to find. Not likely, but possible. 2, we would go to the 4 a.m. bar, they would leave, and I would not know how to return to my hotel, likely, and I would have someone help me get a taxi back if needed. 3. I would manage to retrace my steps and get back, not likely. 4. One of them would assist me in getting back, not likely. I deduced that the second option was the most probable outcome and one I could accept. I rejoined them at the bar. We all went downstairs and began walking towards the 4 a.m. bar. I followed them, but as it was dark outside and I was unfamiliar with the area, I quickly lost track of where we were in relation to my hotel. Upon arrival, we stood at the bar and engaged in light conversation. They both expressed a desire to move to Colorado. One of them was dating a lawyer. They bought me 1 or 2 beers, though I can't recall exactly. It was another first for me. No one had ever bought me a drink in my entire life. It was likely near 2 a.m. and I was quite drunk by this point. I went to the restroom, returned, remained standing, but placed my hand on the back of the bar seat to steady myself. As I continued to chat, I felt one of them touch my hand that rested behind the back of the bar seat. I reached back. It was on. I understood what was transpiring. Is hooking up this easy? I had never had a one-night stand and I didn't have a boyfriend until I was almost 23. But I recognized what was happening as if I had been speaking this language my entire life. The evening began to wind down. Although we enjoyed tactile communication, I was still uncertain about how I would return. I took a deep breath and tried to organize the remnants of my drunken, fatigued mind when the redhead, whose name I believe was Stephen, told his friend, "I'll get her home." I embraced both of them tightly and then went to the curb to wait for the Uber with Stephen. I guess my fourth option was how the night concluded. A small white SUV picked us up. We climbed into the back seat and I immediately sat in Stephen's lap and began kissing him. "You're so sweet," he said. "You're so nice," I responded. Upon entering the lobby, I fumbled my keycard for the elevator and we ascended, unlocked my door, and as I held on to him, I tripped and scraped my arm against the wall on the way down, bringing him with me. We simply held each other for a moment, and then he told me I was sweet and beautiful. I suppose he was also drunk, or is this how people speak during these circumstances? I started to cry. I was nearing 40, and although my life felt like it was ending due to my impending divorce, my ex-husband never gave me that kind of attention. It was overwhelming. I do not believe Stephen actually knew my name, which was fine as he kept referring to me as baby and telling me that I was okay. In between kissing, we talked a little more. It turned out we were both from neighboring states and had both lost a parent in the past year. I suppose our stars were aligned. We kissed passionately and explored each other, but I did not wish to engage in actual penetrative sex, which he completely respected and did not pressure me for at all. As more time passed, it remained dark outside, and I am not sure who suggested it, but I found myself in the bathroom brushing my teeth. I lent him my toothbrush, and then we took a shower together. We held one another under the water and gazed into each other's eyes. It was very pleasant and felt as though we had known each other for ages. I understand that none of this was real or true, but it was quite sweet in the moment. I did not expect to feel relaxed or safe with a man, and there I was. At this point, I was beyond exhaustion, and the alcohol from the day was catching up with me as I found myself slurring my speech and unable to keep track of our conversation. I dried my hair and completed my after-shower routine, and to my astonishment, the sun was rising. I believe it was around 6 a.m. at this point. Stephen mentioned that he should leave, and I took his hand and asked him to please stay. I probably said a few other cringeworthy things like, "Oh, can I see your apartment? Where do you live?" and other stalkerish comments, but I did not genuinely mean it. I was just drunk. I only asked once, and Stephen closed all the blinds and prepared the room, then climbed into bed with me and wrapped his arms around me, and I instantly fell asleep in his embrace. Unfortunately, one thing I neglected was to hang a "Do Not Disturb" sign, so a few hours later I was awakened from a deep, drunken slumber by the sound of a woman shouting, "Housekeeping." Oh no, I had not put on any pajamas and had fallen asleep completely naked in Stephen's arms. We both woke up. I found my glasses and a towel, then approached the door and sheepishly asked her to return in an hour. My mind was a sleepy mess as we clumsily dressed each other. He lifted me up, grabbed my backside, and gave me a long, passionate kiss, and then he was gone. I do not even know how I managed to pack all my belongings and check out, as it was my departure day. I had just showered and washed my hair a few hours earlier, so I was fine there. I washed my face again, brushed my teeth, gathered my clothes, books, perfume bottles, and toiletries from the bathroom, packed everything into my backpack, and checked out. I searched for a cup of tea and called my friend, informing her that I was coming to her room. I entered without saying much and waited for her and her boyfriend to finish getting ready. My friend noticed how tired I looked and draped a blanket over me in the meantime. After that, we all waited to leave the city, walking around a bit, and headed to a bar to pass the time. I just had a 7-Up. Suddenly, it was a warm October afternoon, and I found myself in a park, alone, observing city squirrels and reading my book from the poetry event, until it was time for me to walk to Millennium Station for my train back home. I suppose this isn't a very scandalous story, but that day was one of the best days of my life. It was filled with people, art, food, sports, and a wonderful city to enjoy. I never saw Stephen again, of course, and I have not had anything similar happen since. I occasionally miss him, but I do not dwell on what-ifs or anything of that sort. I am grateful that it happened, though. It was a lovely experience, and every once in a while I think of him fondly. I appreciate that our lives intersected for one night. I am extremely thankful for his kindness and for ensuring my safety while respecting me in every possible way. Story 2. Feeling like an outsider at 18 isn't easy. My friends speak Arabic and discuss college drama I can't relate to. I feel ignored and like an afterthought, I told one friend. This Tuesday, I'm opting out of a reunion that only reminds me I'm no longer part of the group. How do I walk away? This is a lengthy post, so a summary is provided at the bottom if you do not wish to read all the exposition. I am in a bit of a difficult situation with my friend group, and I am unsure how to handle it. I have been friends with 2 girls since 7th grade and the rest of the group since 10th grade, but recently I have been feeling quite disconnected from them. I simply do not think I fit in anymore, and I feel somewhat lonely when I am with them. For context, we are all Arab, but I was not raised speaking Arabic fluently, so I am not very proficient at reading or writing it. I can understand some, but when it comes to Snapchat or group messages, I genuinely cannot keep up with their conversations. In school, it was easier because we would hang out in person and I could follow along. However, now that we are using Snapchat and the group mostly communicates in Arabic, it has honestly become exhausting. The issue is not that they cannot read English, they can, reasonably well, but it is just that I cannot read Arabic to the same extent. So when all they discuss is Arabic media, celebrities, YouTubers, singers, etc., I feel very out of place, especially since we have no shared interests. No, I am not joking, there are literally zero overlapping interests. Another thing is that everyone in the group is attending university or college except me. Therefore, when they talk extensively about university-related topics, I feel very disconnected, and it dawns on me that the thing that linked us together, at least from my point of view, was the school we attended. This situation is made worse by the fact that now they are all in different universities, with the exception of 2 who go to the same university, but they do not have similar schedules, so they only meet up at events if that. Since I am not enrolled in university, I realize that they end up discussing the same tired high school type drama, just with a new perspective. The only difference now is that I know absolutely no one they are gossiping about. Even small details like the renaming of the Snapchat group have begun to make me feel out of place. They changed the group's name from the seniors to the university students. The group's name is actually written in Arabic now, and where I am from, university and college are used interchangeably in conversation, but that is the precise translation in English. The issue, as I mentioned before, is that they are all in university or college except for me, and it feels like an unspoken reminder that I am simply not in the same position as them. I understand that we are all of university age, so technically, it is accurate, but I do not know. They could have attempted to name it something more neutral or humorous. Additionally, they make plans in the group in Arabic, of course, and then just inform me of the date and the location where they will meet. But when I am unable to attend, it feels like they do not even try to reschedule for me because they, perhaps due to how they view me, think I can adjust my schedule to accommodate theirs. They will happily make time for anyone else in the group, but I feel like I am always an afterthought. I understand that they have university schedules and do not have every day free, but neither do I. Do they just assume that because I am not in school, I do nothing all day? Perhaps this is my fault because I have always been the down for whatever whenever person, but I cannot help but feel left out when they do not even check in with me before finalizing plans. Now that we are all caught up, let me explain what is happening. This Tuesday they want to go out, but I do not believe I will go. I do not think it will be enjoyable for me. My friend wants to pick us all up in her car, but my mother does not trust my friend's driving since she just obtained her license, which is understandable considering where we live. The drivers are incredibly reckless, and I do not feel comfortable riding with her either. I have had a fear of cars for a while now and do not travel with inexperienced drivers. Therefore, I would need to go with my father, which is disappointing because it will be me with a parent and them with each other, and that only makes me feel more miserable. It is as if I am still being treated like a child. I am also the youngest in the group, which does not help, and I do not know. It just does not feel like I am their friend anymore, but more like baggage. It has been quite some time since I have genuinely enjoyed spending time with them, and I tried to endure it for the sake of my 2 close friends, whom I have known since 7th grade. However, honestly, I am so tired of feeling lonely when we are together, being talked over, having them ignore my questions even if I ask multiple times, being dismissed because they have no idea what I am referring to, obviously tuning me out while I try to participate in the conversation, always being interrupted mid-thought or story, and never having them circle back to what I was going to say. I cannot endure it any longer. At times it feels personal, which I know it is not. I just do not relate to anything they are saying. I never have. I just feel like I am no longer a part of the group, nor will I ever truly be again. Apologies if I sound dramatic, but that is simply how I express myself, I suppose. I do not want to imply that they are terrible people because they are not. It is just becoming increasingly evident that I am expendable. They are all incredibly kind individually, and they mean well. One sends me cat videos all the time, bless their heart. It is the only thing they know I like, but the reality is that I simply do not think we are on the same wavelength anymore. I have actually been feeling this way for quite some time now, before we even graduated high school, but I remained silent because I did not want to jeopardize the friendship. However, now I can no longer ignore it. I just do not feel like I am having fun with them, and it is becoming harder to pretend that I do. Side note, they have been having a lot of Snapchat calls recently and I have not been joining. It is not that I do not enjoy the calls, it is just that I have been emotionally drained and extremely unhappy, i.e. quite depressed for the past couple of months. A few months ago, I used to join the calls even if they were tedious because I wanted to stay connected. I desired to be in the loop. But lately, I simply cannot summon the energy to sit on a call for hours discussing topics that do not interest me. I cannot even manage to participate in a call about subjects that do interest me anymore. This is obviously not their fault, though this could be something used against me as evidence that I have not been trying to stay in touch. Summary: I have been friends with this group for years, but I have been feeling disconnected for some time. They mostly communicate in Arabic in our group chat, and since I struggle with reading it, I cannot keep up. It was easier to communicate in school, but now I feel like an outsider. They are all in university while I am not, so their conversations revolve around university-related drama, which I cannot relate to. Even minor details like renaming our Snapchat group to the university students make me feel even more out of place. They make plans without consulting me first, and when I cannot attend, they do not reschedule, even though they do for others. I have also been emotionally exhausted and too drained to join their Snapchat calls. Now they want to go out on Tuesday, but I do not want to go. I have not been enjoying our time together for a while. I feel ignored, excluded, and like an afterthought. They are not bad individuals, but I do not believe I fit in anymore, and I do not know how to convey this to them. I have drafted a message to my friend, and I would like to know if it effectively communicates my point. So here we go, the message to the close friend. Hey friend, I do not think I am going to go out with you all this Tuesday. To be honest, I have not been having any fun when we are all together as a group. I just sit there feeling bored and struggle to find anything to say or do to tell the truth. I have felt this way even before we graduated, but I tried to hang in there because I still wanted to enjoy time with you and the other friend from 7th grade. But honestly, I cannot do that anymore. And please know, I am not asking you to choose sides or create a me versus them situation. You can hang out with whomever you like. If you do not have the time to meet up with me individually, I understand, but I just cannot participate in group hangouts anymore. I apologize. Please let me know if any changes should be made, or any advice in general on how to distance myself cleanly. I am not the type to fade away gradually. Thank you for your time and for reading my lengthy message. Story 3. At 25, I discovered my childhood best friend Nate had died from epilepsy at just 19. You were my first real friend, he texted before his graduation, but I never forgave him for our past. Now I feel crushed with guilt and an emptiness I can't shake. Why didn't I reach out? I am a 25-year-old female, and I discovered last December that my childhood best friend Nate had passed away in April 2024. I had not used Facebook much since the pandemic and logged in around Christmas time this past December to message a few relatives who live in another country. I was curious to see what I had missed, so I quickly scrolled through my feed and stopped at a post from my former best friend's mother, expressing how heartbroken she was to spend his birthday and the holidays without him for the first time. I continued scrolling on her page and found the obituary links from the previous April. He had died from epilepsy during his sleep. I was devastated, feeling as though the world had crumbled around me, and all I could feel was guilt. We met in first grade, sitting at the same table in homeroom and sharing cubbies in art class. English is not my first language, and I struggled to keep up in class and social situations. I was and continue to be an anxiety-filled person. Nate was the first individual who genuinely attempted to befriend me despite the language barrier. He reached out his hand, introduced me to his friends, and played with me during recess. He made me feel safe, especially since I was often bullied for my accent, my weight, and my Asian heritage. He made me feel included and wanted, and I genuinely owe many of my happiest childhood moments to him. We created imaginary worlds on that playground. He read Harry Potter and Percy Jackson books to me during lunch so that I could enjoy them as well. He was exceptionally skilled at making us feel as if we were experiencing those stories alongside the characters. It was only years later when I read them myself that I discovered he would add his own twists to the narratives or enhance the world building. Nate, along with our 3 other friends, and I thought it would be like that forever. 5th grade was the first school year when we were not in the same homeroom, and it was disappointing, but at least we had recess. Gradually, throughout that school year, Nate and the other boys stopped including me in their games, ceased inviting me to hang out, and suddenly the lunch table became boys only. I was heartbroken. They were my only friends, and to be excluded, especially as the sole outcast, felt devastating. In the last quarter of that school year, I learned I was moving a few towns over, so I isolated myself until the school year concluded. I, the ever-dramatic and hurt fifth grader, decided that writing them each a letter to include in their yearbooks at the end of the term would be a good idea. I was young, dramatic, and deeply hurt. Each friend received a short paragraph, but Nate received at least 2 pages of me pouring out my heart to him, expressing how hurt and lonely he made me feel, and how much I despised him for abandoning me without explanation. Slipping the letter into his yearbook before the school bus pickup was the last time I saw him. This was a time before any of us had phones or social media, so I did not hear from him or any of them until the end of middle school. I created my Facebook account at the end of 8th grade and soon received many friend requests from people I knew from grade school, one of which was from Nate. I accepted his request and he frequently poked me every few weeks. Eventually, during sophomore year, he messaged me expressing sorrow for hurting me. It turned out that one of the other boys in our group, Willie, had developed a crush on me, and to avoid any cootie drama, they all ignored me so that Willie could get over me. I do not know the reasoning of a 10-year-old explained through the lens of a hormonal 15-year-old. It resulted in a very confusing and foolish paragraph. At that time in my life, I was dealing with bullying and self-harm, and I lashed out at him. I felt enraged that I had lost all my friends because someone had liked me too much. I was ostracized for something entirely beyond my control. The 15-year-old me could not process that explanation and reacted explosively to him, saying cruel things and using colorful language I would not even use as an adult. I instructed him to never contact me again, as it would only cause me pain. After 2 years of radio silence, he occasionally left comments of great job or happy for you on my achievement posts. The night before his high school graduation, he called me through Messenger. I would graduate a week later. He shared that he would be moving to a new state in the fall semester for university, and I would be doing the same, though on the opposite coast of the country. I was in a better mental space, and we discussed what had transpired in 5th grade and everything in between. He told me he still had the letter I wrote him and admitted that what they did was foolish. I acknowledged that I had been harsh in our last exchange. He asked if I could ever forgive him and his friends, and I replied that as much as I wanted to, I couldn't. The 18-year-old me was a deeply hurt and troubled young woman. She grappled with depression, was recovering from an eating disorder, was a survivor of sexual assault, and was generally unwilling to let anyone close. I told him that he was my first friend and my first real betrayal, and that life had not been kind to me since they turned me away at lunch so many years ago. We were both in tears. He said he understood and invited me to his graduation party if I ever changed my mind, then hung up. I did not attend. That was the last time we spoke. We did not part on bad terms. Our conversation healed a lot of the pain from my childhood, but we still left as strangers who once cared deeply for one another, and that will always be painful. Over the next few years, we congratulated each other on awards and milestones through Facebook, but those were the shallow congratulatory comments usually reserved for coworkers one hardly knows. Occasionally, I felt the urge to reach out, and during a few visits to his city, I considered asking to grab coffee but ultimately decided against it. I wish I had acted differently. We were children when we fell apart. I recognized that it was foolish to remain so guarded against him all these years, but the hurt was profound. Learning of his passing felt like I had no right to grieve, and I did not anticipate the depth of the pain. It felt as though a black hole had formed in my chest. Last week marked the anniversary of his death, and it still feels neither fair nor real. I feel terrible for not forgiving him when I had the opportunity. Clearly, I still cared for him to some degree. Otherwise, I would have simply blocked his account when he attempted to add me on Facebook all those years ago. Why, oh why did I not forgive him? I feel genuinely frustrated with myself. When one loves someone as a child, whether romantically or platonically, it envelops you entirely. When I say that Nate was my first and best friend as a child, I mean that he was a crucial part of the foundation of my life. Now he is gone, and I still cannot comprehend it. I will always remember the boy with the perpetually crooked glasses who reached out his hand and invited me to play make-believe with him on the very first day of 1st grade. I will always cherish the boy who allowed me to play on his Nintendo DS because my family could not afford toys or games, and who shared half his lunch with me at school during the 2008 recession when free school lunch was cut in our district, simply because he did not want me to go hungry. I will forever mourn the friendship we had, and the bond I foolishly tried to distance myself from. Thank you for reading. To the awkward, shy girl at lunch, she has grown up to love books and now possesses Percy Jackson books in her personal library with little tabs added to customize the stories. Thank you for helping me learn how to socialize and stay true to my craft. I remain shy, but I have found a supportive group of artistic individuals. And thank you for attempting your best to make amends. I apologize for not trying harder, too. I turned 25 this year, an age you will never reach. I thought of you and recalled how you would say you would protect me, since a knight always protects young ladies, and how I would roll my eyes and complain that you were only a month older than me. Turning 25 was bittersweet, knowing that this was the first year I would be older than you. If you're still reading this, random stranger from the internet, do not make the same mistake. If you have fallen out with someone you once cared for and you have even the slightest inclination to reach out to them, I encourage you to do so. It does not matter whether it is to finalize matters before blocking them or to mend the relationship. If even a tiny part of you wants to speak to them and they express the same sentiment, just do it. You will not always have the chance, so seize it. Story 4. My ex claims men should be able to hit on other women since their girlfriends get hit on. After 4.5 years of turmoil, I finally went on dates to escape his constant accusations. Now I'm left wondering if this relationship is beyond repair. Can love endure this chaos? I apologize for not being able to answer your calls. Since it has been 3 weeks since we last communicated, I believe I have forgotten what it feels like to be yelled at, called manipulative, and labeled with other epithets. You accused me of seeking validation from other men when we lived together last year, even though I consistently tried to avoid upsetting you or giving you that impression. 95% of my time at school, I felt I looked unappealing. Even on the rare occasions when I dressed nicely and was not going out with you, I was criticized for it. I have repeatedly apologized for my actions from over 3 years ago, especially during a rocky phase in our relationship when I lacked the skills to handle conflicts and was often rude. My behavior stemmed from a belief that you did not value foreplay or my pleasure, while I had done quite a lot for yours during those 3 months together. During our long-distance relationship, when we were engaging in intimate conversation, I felt too hurt to handle things maturely. I have expressed my remorse numerous times and continue to do so. The first man I mentioned was someone I spoke with digitally while we were broken up. I told you about him, and I apologize for sharing explicit details a bit late. I have repeatedly expressed my fear of admitting I had intimate conversations and how they meant nothing to me. They were merely a distraction from the heartbreak I felt after being blocked by you and not having heard from you for 3 months. The second man, my neighbor in graduate school, gave me food without me asking. I declined several times, but he insisted that it would go to waste, so I eventually paid him for it. Our neighbors had helped us get our sofa inside, and since we were casual friends, I felt I could not be rude. I also informed him that I was in a committed relationship because I believed he might have feelings for me. The third situation was out of my control as well. After a classmate who called me late one night while drunk complimented me, I panicked and put him on speaker, thinking it would not be an issue. I did not engage with him further and ended the call as politely as I could. I explicitly told him days later that I was in a relationship and maintained as much distance as I could since we had mutual friends in class. I stopped interacting with the content he sent me and gave him the cold shoulder. I have apologized for all these instances. You have raised these issues numerous times, yet they occurred 2.5 years ago. I have consistently expressed regret and shared with you every little compliment I receive and how I decline it, though sometimes I realize I should be less polite in doing so. You brought up a colleague I worked with earlier today, and I am unsure why you remember his name. I am exhausted from proving to you that these are just people with whom I collaborated and shared brief conversations, nothing more. I stopped socializing entirely and avoided parties altogether. You perceived parties as gatherings of people who drink and smoke, and since I do not, you believed I should not attend them either. You questioned whether there would be men present whenever I was invited to events by my friends in graduate school, yet I never went. I ceased posting on social media to the extent that people began asking me if I still existed. I was not seeking attention, so it pains me to hear you say that. You keep track of what I wear to the gym, and I mentioned every time someone complimented me, even if it resulted in you being passively rude. I have never tried to control you, as you claimed during our phone call today, nor do I believe I am manipulative. It was a relief not to hear such accusations over the past few weeks. I wanted you to have female friends and socialize, perhaps so you could understand me better and see how much I have been hurt. I suggested that we both interact with other people since you do not, to explore our wants for a while, as this relationship has not been working. I did not want us to discuss every flaw you see in me while outlining the type of woman you want to be with and how I fall short compared to the sacrifices you perceive you made. I have conveyed my urgency regarding not wanting to waste time. I am growing older, and if this relationship is unviable, I need to find a partner who truly appreciates me, as I do for them. After 4.5 years, I went on a couple of dates, feeling this situation is a lost cause and that we cannot comprehend each other. I reached out to you because I hoped you missed me just as I missed you, wanting to cling to the romantic notion that this is not real and that we can salvage it. I cannot determine if it was appropriate to go on any dates, but I wanted to allow myself a chance to not feel miserable and interact with someone else. You told me that women get approached more than men, so men should be able to pursue other women as well. I found that reasoning flawed. When I expressed my disagreement, you shouted at me for saying that and for going on 2 dates. I had already informed you in previous conversations that I plan to do so because I have exhausted every option and am unhappy with how you treat and speak about me. You called me manipulative, selfish, and attention-seeking for having gone on dates despite having centered my life around you for so long, often neglecting my female friends because it was an issue if you were available. You have instructed me to be quiet. You have said this during almost every argument we've had for an extended period, and continued to raise your voice. I repeatedly requested that you not shout, but ultimately I ended the call midway to prevent myself from crying too loudly, having forgotten how awful it felt to be addressed like that since we hadn't spoken in 3 weeks. I was trembling and didn't pick up any of your calls afterward because I was unable to do so. You had previously blocked me partially, which limited my ability to send messages. Regarding your claim that you communicated your desire for a relationship while wanting to speak to other women in different ways, yes, you have expressed multiple times that you are unsure about marrying anyone and prefer to date casually. I feel deeply hurt when you make these statements because I have communicated my serious intentions since the beginning of our relationship, which is why we had a long-distance setup, and I confided in my conservative family about us. You frequently mentioned marriage and commitment, only later to deflect blame onto me, insisting we should be married now like my sister and her husband who met after us. You also suggested that I should direct my focus toward building your business with you, for which you never provide any information, rather than pursuing my education and seeking employment with a company that compensates me with a salary, insurance, and a 401k. I have assured you that I find value in my work, as it adds to my career trajectory, and I desire to be financially independent, especially considering our financial instability. Then you express your desire for a partner who elevates your life, which has caused me pain. I have made attempts to explain this to you, and I have cried and argued about it many times. Yet today, you tell me that you are uncertain about what you want and think you want to date someone while also entertaining other women since women get approached more often, and men do not, thus believing men should have that freedom while being in a relationship. When I assert that this perspective is misguided, you respond angrily. Yes, I went on a few dates as a result of our continued instability and breakups over the past 8 months. I can no longer spend another weekend alone in my room crying. I am fatigued and wanted to do something to alleviate my misery and move on from someone who seems to think the worst of me. I do not know anyone in this city, and I specifically included in my dating profile that I wish to be friends first. I cannot wait indefinitely for you to determine that I am worth it. So I could wait for you to leave your mother's house and join me after pleading for 8 months while you consistently criticize me and we argue, only for you to block me afterward. I have exerted every effort to appease you, yet all you notice are the disagreements and label them as arguments, or I must defend myself when you attack me with insults and dredge up my past actions, claiming I have not changed despite my efforts to improve. I feel like I am constantly treading on eggshells. In summary, my ex, a 32-year-old male, argues that men should be permitted to pursue other women since I, a 28-year-old female, receive male attention, complicating our relationship with additional issues. This message aims to provide you with complete context. Is our relationship salvageable? I apologize for any typos, I am still a bit shaken. Story 5. I lost Chris, the love of my life, to suicide at just 20. The last time we locked eyes, I felt time stand still, but I let him go thinking he deserved better. Now at 25, I face the haunting truth. What if I had never broken up with him? The weight of regret is unbearable. Will I ever find peace? When I was 14, I met the love of my life, Chris. A lot of people believe that you cannot possibly know that at such a young age, but I realized it from the moment I first saw him. I remember the exact moment I laid eyes on him. It was as if time stood still and it was just the two of us there. He was the kindest and most loving person I had ever met. He was always supportive, made me laugh, and provided me with a sense of security. Although we did not live in the same city and my parents were quite strict, which limited our meetings to just 2 days a week, we stayed in touch constantly through calls and messages. However, being a teenager is incredibly challenging. I faced bullying at school, and in addition to that, I struggled in most subjects and had to devote a lot of time just to pass my classes. Concentrating was difficult for me, and I also had dyslexia. My relationship with my family was strained, so Chris became my safe haven. Despite this, I felt very depressed and did not want to burden him with my struggles. When I started high school, my life improved significantly. I received a fresh start in a new city and made new friends. Still, I was dealing with deep depression, which led me to break up with Chris because I believed he deserved to be with someone happier, someone better than me. I created a flimsy excuse for the breakup, knowing that if I had told him the truth, he would have stayed with me, but I wanted the best for him. Consequently, I broke his heart, and he told me he intended to take his own life. although he did not do so at that moment. I always believed we would reunite when I was in a better place, and we would live the life we had envisioned together. About 6 months later, I entered into a new relationship with Frank because I did not want to be alone. Our relationship turned out to be extremely abusive, both physically and mentally, and he was frequently unfaithful. I felt as though I deserved this treatment because of how I had hurt Chris. Frank moved in with me and my family after being kicked out by his parents. The abuse and gaslighting escalated, leading me to develop anorexia due to his damaging words. My parents were unaware of the situation because I was too afraid to confide in them. After a year, he moved into his own place. I remained in that relationship for 2 years, finally leaving when I had to choose between my life and the relationship. I was at my lowest and barely survived, but thought that if I just improved, there might be a chance to reconcile with Chris. Chris and I began communicating again, but I was too fearful to ask if we could give our relationship another try, and I found myself more depressed than ever. We did not meet in person but maintained a lot of contact. I started therapy and had to put in significant effort to heal. I refrained from bringing it up to him, not wanting to cause him more pain than I already had. By that time, it had been 6 years since our breakup, but I was still not over him. During this period, Frank began stalking me and attempted to befriend my friends. I was terrified of him. After a year, I was tired of being alone, yet I was too scared to ask Chris for another chance. Therefore, I entered another relationship with Carl, which was also very abusive, but I again convinced myself that I deserved it. I also realized that he could offer some protection from Frank, which seemed to work, as Frank stopped his harassment after a few months. Then one day, a friend contacted me to say that Chris had committed suicide, but I could not accept it as reality. How could this be true? We were supposed to build our lives together once I was healed and brave enough to request another chance, so I disbelieved it. I did not attend the funeral because in my mind it could not be true, and if it were, how could I endure such a loss? I continued attending therapy but refused medication at that time, believing I could improve without it. After 6 months, I broke up with Carl and needed to relocate to escape him. I moved to the city where I began university, and it was during this time that I felt overwhelmed by a flood of emotions and came to the realization that Chris was truly gone. I had been in survival mode for so long, trying to protect myself, and when I finally found a safe space, I was struck by the painful truth. I sought therapy once again, and since I still faced concentration difficulties in school, they recommended that I undergo a neuropsychological assessment to check for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. However, the clinic stated that I had to begin taking medication for my depression, as this was the only way to proceed with the assessment. They prescribed so much medication that I became completely numb, feeling high at all times, frequently fainting and struggling with my anorexia. I existed in this state for a long while until they adjusted my dosages, causing my depression to worsen. My psychologist took me to the emergency room for mental health patients because I felt suicidal, but they would not admit me, insisting that I simply needed sleep. As a result, I was given sleeping pills, and they initiated yet another assessment to determine if I had borderline personality disorder. Meanwhile, Frank resumed stalking me, prompting me to change my name, relocate, and obtain a new phone number to evade him. Despite all the medication and therapy, I thought I would eventually move past Chris, but it only intensified once I reached the age he was when he took his life. Every year, during the month leading to his birthday and the 31 days following his death, I experienced profound bouts of depression. It has been 11 years since he passed away, and each year feels more painful than the last. Many people in my life have told me to just get over it. It has been years, and we were merely teenagers when we were together. I entered relationships after his death, but none of them lasted because how could they when all I could think about was the life I could have had with him? I wish I could stop loving and missing him. For years, I blamed myself for his suicide because he mentioned he would end his life when I broke up with him. I now understand that his last year was difficult. He lost his father, with whom he was very close, to cancer, and he had to bear a heavy burden to support his mother and siblings during that time. His mother passed away a year later from a broken heart, as she also blamed herself. I will never truly know why he made that decision, and it occupies my thoughts constantly. I just wish I could go back in time and choose not to end our relationship. Perhaps if I had not, he would still be alive. I regret not telling him the truth and not giving him the option to decide for himself whether to stay or leave. I remember the last time I saw him. We had planned to meet up on my birthday since we were both going out in the same city, and he wanted to buy me a birthday drink. Unfortunately, we missed each other, but when I was at the bar, I caught sight of him passing by outside the window. It felt just like the first time I saw him. Everything stood still and it was just him and me. Our eyes locked, he smiled and waved, and then walked away with his friends to catch the last bus home. I no longer know how to cope with these feelings and this guilt. I have been in therapy and on various medications for over 11 years now, and nothing seems to help. I simply want to be with him. The highlight of my day is going to bed because if I dream about him, it feels for a moment like he is alive and I can be with him. I wish I could move on, but it appears I am unable to do so. I fear that I will carry this sorrow for the rest of my life. I understand we were just teenagers, but he was and is the love of my life. I have never loved anyone, nor have I ever been loved by anyone as I was by him. We had an entire life planned together, and I cannot stop thinking about it. He was such a beautiful person and cherished by many, but it seems most people have moved on while I cannot. How does one get over the death of the love of their life?